Alrighty, everyone. Good evening, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys for tonight's weather chat. We'll make this kind of a little bit of a quick one here. We're going to take a look at Tropical Storm Philippe very briefly. There's not really a whole lot to see with it. And we'll also take a look at what's going on right now with the latest on the weather. Now, as you mentioned, past couple of days we've been talking about some very above average temperatures across the upper part of the Midwest. Well, that is now kind of coming to at least a little bit of an end for now, but we'll take a look at some interesting numbers from that. And a few of them, there's a lot of interesting numbers that actually came out of that little spell there of above average temperatures. But with that in mind, folks, let's go ahead and start off with the tropics. We'll take a quick little look at Tropical Storm Philippe, and there it is. At least it has convection this time around. But it's still a little bit of a mess, all things considered. And as a matter of fact, this thing is barely a tropical system. Winds right now about 40 miles an hour. What is Philippe going to be doing? Well, it's kind of rounding the western edge of an area of high pressure way off towards its east. So that will put it on the western edge of it. And it is tracking its way to the north, trying to get around that. As we move our way through the next couple of days, it's just going to kind of drift its way up towards the north. But eventually, it's actually going to get caught up in the same upper level trough that's helping to bring an end to these warm temperatures across the upper Midwest. Well, that same upper level trough will then make its way across the Great Lakes region. Eventually, Philippe's going to kind of get entangled in all of that. It's going to transition from a tropical system to a non-tropical system, and then it'll eventually just kind of work its way back into the Canadian Maritimes or maybe off the Maine coast as a tropical storm. Well, at least as a non-tropical storm, still with some tropical characteristics to it, but you get what I'm saying. So it won't actually technically be a full-fledged tropical storm when it does move in. And again, at that point, even then, their Hurricane Center is not expecting that it's going to be overly strong, maybe 50, 60 mile an hour winds when it does make landfall. Nothing unusual for the New England coastline and the Canadian Maritimes. So with that in mind, folks, we had some very, 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 very hot temperatures across parts of the upper Midwest the past few days. As a matter of fact, one interesting thing I did find, didn't get a chance to make this into a graphic, but from my quick, going through some of the numbers, International Falls, Minnesota, which is right up on the Canadian border. A lot of people like to look at their temperatures in the wintertime because they're often one of the coldest spots in the lower 48. But they had an average temperature on October 2nd, all right, so 2 days ago. They had an average temperature. That's taking the high and the low and averaging it together. We do that a lot in climatology. 78 degrees. Okay, now for those of you probably watching down south, that's nothing. But up here, that is actually pretty impressive to have an average temperature of 78 degrees. To give you an idea of how above average and how a little unusual that was, going through kind of the data quickly, that makes it October 2nd tied for July 26th of this past summer with an average temperature of 78 degrees. Those were the two warmest days. Yeah, July 26th and October 2nd, International Falls. All right, so with that in mind, was it the warmest day for some other areas? Depending upon how you wanted to kind of look at it, but that's at least International Falls, one of the places I went through kind of quickly. The other one was Duluth. You know what? The heck with it. We're going to take a look at a spreadsheet here that I managed to make. We're not going to spend a long time on this, believe me. It's just kind of a quick little thing here I put together. But for the Duluth area over at the airport, these are the warmest these are the average temperatures, okay? High and the low average together for each of the days. And these are the top 10 warmest days. September 3rd, 84 degrees. That was the warmest day, at least, of the summer season. October 2nd and 3rd ranked tied for 11th, so kind of down there at the bottom. And part of the thing that saved Duluth was the presence of Lake Superior, which has been around for quite a while. But that's kind of one of the things that kept Duluth from maybe seeing their temperatures going quite as high. And we kind of talked a little bit about that the other day, a little bit of a lake breeze. I know while some of these places were kind of baking on the 2nd, as we got into the 3rd, it was just kind of, as we got into the day on the 2nd in Duluth, it was kind of cloudy and foggy. And it was actually kind of the same way the day before that. And then once we got those winds to kind of push some of that air away. So, anyways, that's not the point. The point of the matter is it was still pretty unusually warm even in the Duluth area, and they kind of saved themselves a little bit from that. One interesting thing here that we'll come back and take a little bit of a look at that I think would be pretty interesting is if we were to take the first 3 days of October for some of these locations. What we'll do here in just a few moments is we'll take a look at the first 3 days of this month. We'll compare it to the average temperatures that we saw over the summertime. So just kind of a fun little number thing there for you. All right, let's take a look here. Latest weather map here. Let's go ahead and take a look. There is our cold front making its way through Wisconsin back into Illinois, albeit the air mass down this part is not quite as much, but nonetheless, we could see pretty decent. Still in the lower 80s over in Michigan, and the temperatures right now in the lower 60s, upper 50s across parts of Minnesota, even a little bit lower than that once you go a little further back to the west, mid 50s over around north central Minnesota. With that in mind, that's the first wave of the cold front. Now, this cold front is probably going to start slowing down a little bit and even kind of losing a little bit of its intensity. But there's good news. There's a second cold front. That's right. This guy back over here across Saskatchewan. And this one is probably going to be bringing a better push of cooler air into places, especially across the upper Midwest and into parts of the Great Lakes. As a matter of fact, this front is likely going to help to push the temperatures around the Duluth area into the 30s as we go forward here in the forecast, especially beginning, I think, as we go into tomorrow night and more so going into Friday night and over the weekend. So definitely some frost type of temperatures there. But take a look there again. They're in the 40s back out of across parts of Saskatchewan. So if we take a look at the upper level map here, basically, this is our upper level low. It's a little hard to see it. The center of it's actually just off to the screen in the north there, but nonetheless, you can still see that trough kind of swinging its way down through here. We got kind of this little bit of what you could kind of consider a jet streak somewhat coming out of the Canadian prairies there. And again, that's associated with that secondary area of low pressure dragging that cold front through. So when this guy pushes its way down into the upper Midwest later on tomorrow, it's going to help to kind of start developing a little bit of a closed low that'll eventually move its way into the Great Lakes region as we head into the weekend. Now, what does that mean? Well, again, when we take a look at these maps here, the kind of big thing to keep in mind here is not only the upper level winds, but also the fact that this helps to tell us, exactly how cold that air mass is, not just at the surface, but as we go higher up there, kind of a short way of explaining it there. So again, certainly seeing a much colder upper level air mass that's beginning to work its way now into the northern part of the U.S., and it will continue to do so over the next couple of days. With that in mind, this is the same trough that's eventually, when it moves into the Great Lakes, it will eventually kind of absorb Philippe, help Philippe to accelerate northwards, and it'll eventually absorb it. And that'll actually kind of help the upper level low to maybe continue on. All right, so fun little thing there. Of course, most tropical cyclones tend to meet their end this way. But anyways, with that in mind, that's a look at the upper level charts here. Now, fun little side fact earlier today was across parts of Minnesota and going back into parts of North Dakota, they saw a lot of pop-up rain showers during the day today. That's not unusual to see in this type of an atmospheric setup, where even though the surface temperatures are much lower, the temperatures higher up are even lower than that, and it actually creates a little bit of instability. And one of the things we use in meteorology to determine that is called a lapse rate, which is basically the change of temperature with height. Where we see higher values of that tends to give us a good indication that there may be at least a little bit of instability. Now, there's some other factors that sometimes go into this, but this is kind of one of those old school, quick, little fun things to see here. So if we back this up a little bit, this is the mid-level lapse rates here. And again, they were not extreme across parts of the upper Midwest, but they were still enough that we had those rain showers pop up. And these were all diurnal rain showers, which means they really didn't develop until the sun came out and we started heating the very lower levels of the ground. That air rose pretty quickly because there's a much cooler air mass above it. But they could only rise so much. Some other factors kind of playing into that part of there. So in that type of a setup, we tend to see, those afternoon, mostly cloudy skies and those spotty rain showers here and there. And as a matter of fact, as I was driving across the area this afternoon, again, I'm up around the Duluth area, you could see, especially once you got up on the hillside, you could see just all these little scattered showers kind of off in the distance there. So once the sun began to set, though, you could see how those values really dropped off a little bit there. And they're going to kind of continue to do so as we move our way through. Now, interestingly, you see how they're higher, though, further back off towards the west. That's that secondary front coming through. So again, we got a lot of cooler air that's just kind of rushing in, ahead of the cooler air mass at the surface. It kind of lags most of the time. It does lag a little bit. The upper levels will respond faster than the lower levels. Part of the reason for that is friction, among a few other things. But again, this is the RAP, the wrap here, about 6 hours out, and you can still see those lapse rates pretty high back out there, closer to where that secondary cold front is. And again, will probably help to keep at least a few scattered showers, maybe around parts of northern Minnesota overnight tonight. But really, we'll probably see some more rain shower activity across the upper Midwest as we go into the day tomorrow night, and heading into Friday. Again, that's going to be because not only are we going to have that surface low moving through, but also that upper level low. So let's take a look here at our good friends over at the Weather Prediction Center here. What are we expecting on the surface chart? Again, we have our own forecast kind of here at AWSC, but it's just kind of easy sometimes to show the map. So right there, just behind, just off to my screen here, right there, I'm kind of pointing at it. Man, I got to get this figured out. There we go, that way, right there. That's the cold front, the main one that pushed through. Now watch as we go through the next day or so how it kind of begins to slow down. And back here is that secondary cold front here. Now this guy is going to push its way through. You can see how that cold front begins to slow down across parts of the Great Lakes region. We're going to wait for that jet streak to kind of come in and help push that secondary low pressure through. Take a look at that cold front is eventually going to catch up. The second cold front will eventually catch up with the first cold front as we go into tomorrow, and as we go into the day tomorrow. Meanwhile, that low is just kind of spinning around courtesy of that whole upper level trough, which will become closed, and again, just kind of slowly orbiting its way down through the Great Lakes region. So again, we have this little surface low pressure bringing these little waves of low pressure through, low pressure bringing waves of low pressure through. That's a word for you. All right, so that's going to help kind of keep those scattered showers. But again, that cooler air just continues to rush in. As we go to tomorrow night, you can see how that first cold front begins to weaken off. This is kind of the one that's going to take over. And not only that, but we can see here that our surface low is become occluded. That's what that little purple front means, by the way. What is that? It's when the colder air basically overruns the warm front. And this is important when it comes to the overall life cycle of a low pressure. Low pressures like to move air. They like to lift warm air. When they have colder air, that cuts off the inflow of the warmer air. The low pressure has a hard time moving that, and eventually that will begin the end part of the life cycle for the low pressure. So again, we start seeing that purple, it means it's occluded, and now we're starting to get that cold front rushing out ahead. However, where all that meets, right there, you can kind of see here, that's called a triple point in meteorology, all right, where the cold front overruns the warm front, and that occluded front comes. That's called triple point. A lot of times, especially with stronger systems, that's where we see new centers of low pressure at the surface developing, and that looks to be exactly what's going to be happening. Take a look there. Oh, I'm in the way. Let me go ahead and move the screen over here really quickly. Take a look at this. It's pretty cool. All right, there it is. That's the new center of low pressure. So let me back this up here a little bit. There you go. You can see old center, triple point right there. And boom, new center takes over, or new center develops, and that will be the one that's eventually going to take over. Meanwhile, we're still dealing with some waves of low pressure at the surface moving through parts of the Great Lakes. So it is likely, again, going to help to keep some of those rain showers around. Meanwhile, just off the screen here at the bottom there, you see that big H there, that area of high pressure. That area of high pressure is certainly going to be bringing in some cooler air with it, and you can see it just kind of takes over the central part of the U.S. by the time we head into Friday night. Once we get those rain showers to exit out of the upper Midwest, things will probably be a lot quieter, albeit maybe a little on the cloudy side heading into the weekend. But take a look, as that whole upper level trough, though, makes its way into the Great Lakes. That's going to cause quite a bit of, maybe a little bit of a wet weekend across the Northeast and parts of the eastern half of the Great Lakes, and maybe even going into the Mid-Atlantic area too. So could be interesting for some of the football games. There might be a little bit of a wet one. So what happens as we go beyond that? We'll take a look here. That low pressure really just intensifies. And here's what's actually also going to be happening. So this is Philippe right here, folks. Again, we're looking right now at about 3 days out here. So again, we're looking into the weekend. So here's our area of low pressure at the surface. Okay. Our whole upper level low is still hanging around this area. And take a look, Philippe gets absorbed into that. And that's going to help the surface low back here to really intensify. Take a look. Boom. That's pretty cool. So this stuff always interests me. Some of you might be a little bit boring, but again, this is synoptic weather, not mesoscale. This is synoptic. Big scale weather stuff here going on. So take a look there. Again, this is a really good example, by the way, just on the way this is laid out. Whether this actually happens exactly as is, we'll have to wait about 4 more days. But take a look here. You can see here's that colder air. There's the warmer air coming into the center of the low pressure. That cold front then cuts it off. Okay, so that's what the occlusion is right here. And again, that is, effectively the upper level low is stacked right over that low pressure system. It's a cold air mass, not much lifting going to be happening there. So now it has to find a new center, and that's normally right around the triple point area. So pretty cool. Looks like it'll probably be pretty windy across the New England, across the Northeast too. Not just from the remnants of Philippe, but also that's a pretty tight pressure gradient developing there across New York and Pennsylvania, heading back into Michigan and eastern Ontario. Again, there's that high pressure. There's an area of low pressure. And they're expecting that to be actually a pretty decent sized low pressure. They have it at about 992 millibars, which is a pretty decent sized low pressure there. Obviously not kind of lows that we see with tropical systems, but for a mid-latitude system, that's a pretty decent one. They can get a bit stronger than that during the winter time, but that's a pretty decent size low. And yeah, that's going to be pretty cool to watch as we go into the weekend. We'll probably have to do a couple special weather chats to keep an eye on this little guy here. This is what's fun about the fall, folks. Fall, winter, and early spring, depending upon where you are. You get these really cool low pressures here. Not only that, but it gets really fascinating, especially when you enter the fact of the warm waters of the Atlantic Ocean off the East Coast and the cold air mass and the cold air mass over land that creates itself a very nice gradient that helps those nor'easters to develop. So unfortunately, though, all good things may come to an end. Take a look there. I might be blocking it here a little bit, so I'll move the screen slightly here, but and I have seen this on a lot of the upper level charts too that I've been looking at on the side. Looks like we have a new ridge that's going to develop over the Rocky Mountain area. And yep, there's a warm front that'll probably start lifting and maybe bringing some of those above average temperatures back a little bit. However, it'll be pretty interesting to see, especially now that we have some kind of cooler air in place, exactly how that will interact right around here with parts of Lake Superior. So pretty cool. The more I look at this too, this might actually end up being a lake-enhanced rain type of setup across Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and maybe even parts of Lake Huron. Lake effect snow, if you guys have ever heard of that. In this case, temperature is still too warm, so it'll probably be lake effect rain. But some showers, kind of similar properties, just warmer temperatures. So that's pretty cool. Alrighty, everyone. I think I might have bored you all enough for one evening. But again, as we go through the next couple of days, I think we're really going to have something really fun to watch here. And this may be a pretty good low pressure to use as an example when we talk about the life cycle of a low pressure. I mean, we already got the upper level low that's looking like it's going to develop. We got our surface low already in place. And to add in for the fun, we have a weakening tropical system that has kind of struggled anyway, but getting absorbed into it. And again, folks, that is not unusual, especially this time of the year. Most tropical systems meet their end this way. Hurricanes, they'll run into something and get absorbed, but normally, they're always photogenic when that happens. But that's how most tropical systems will actually meet their end. Or it can be like Rena and just fall apart in the middle of the ocean because it wasn't really much anyway. So that also happens every now and then. So fun times, everyone. So you're going to want to make sure you tune in over the next couple of days. You're going to learn some cool weather stuff, life cycles of a low pressure system. And like I said, this is going to be a good example of one to use. So with that in mind, everyone, I hope you'll have a good rest of your evening. Tomorrow's Thursday. Yay! All right. Hope you all have a good rest of your evening, everyone. And in the meantime, maybe we'll have Velvet joining us tomorrow. Maybe Velvet the Weather Cat needs to come in. Yeah, she hasn't made an appearance in a while. Folks in Ohio who watch me on TV there know who I'm talking about. Velvet's in the other room right now. She was in here earlier, but she didn't want to join on this one. But I think she might want to join tomorrow. So tune in for Velvet the Weather Cat. Looks like she might want to make a little appearance. So, alrighty, everyone. With that in mind, I hope you'll have a good rest of your Wednesday evening. See you back here tomorrow for some really cool stuff. In the meantime, take care and keep enjoying that weather.